Hello again, Cadre. I think this is an interesting model to take a look at as we're studying change. This is a result of a new book by a man by the name of Bridges, and it's entitled Managing Transitions, Making the Most of Change. And it's got an interesting model that you can see on the screen there that I'm going to try to explain in just a few minutes so that you grasp the concept of it. Basically, the premise of this is that life basically occurs in the chaos of life, in that neutral zone as we're moving from ending to new beginning kind of thing. And so the notion that life really has, the notion of this model is that life really has three phases: the ending or losing or letting go stage. You go through then a neutral zone and then to a new beginning. The neutral zone is characterized as it's an all new area that's in between zone. It's sometimes characterized as no man's land. Uh, and that it isn't a smooth transition from ending to neutral zone to new beginning. So what basically that you're looking at is, in this model, is that the transition begins, or change begins, with letting go of something, moving into that neutral zone, which can be a no man's land. It's kind of limbo. It's wandering around the wilderness until you find your way into that new way, or that new beginning. One of the things that's true about this model, or that's important about this model to understand, is that you can't rush that neutral zone. And so often we try to jump from the ending, losing, and letting go over to the new beginning, and really don't want to spend any time in that neutral zone because it's uncomfortable. In fact, there's quite a bit of data that shows that people who for whom that neutral zone is chaotic tend to be far more susceptible to diseases, susceptible to burnout, because they really just can't take not being either one place or the other, and so they hang on to the old, or they grasp at anything that will get them to the new. Well, being in that neutral zone can make you feel like something is wrong with you, something is wrong with what you're doing. You may try some things to escape, but leadership in change models has to do with finding a comfort in the, not the chaos necessarily, but the upheaval and the constant trying of new things, and sometimes spinning the wheels, trying to find your way forward through that neutral zone to get to that new beginning. The only way, let me give a very personal example of it. The only way that you can recreate yourself is to be, let's say you're not happy with the way you are, or the way that you express deep dispositions that you have, and you'd like some of the dispositions that you have to take a more of a backseat to some other ones. Well, you can recreate yourself. In fact, that whole term or topic of reinvention has to do with this very thing. If you really want to let go of the old you to get to a new you, wandering around in this neutral zone is a very important thing, and it's something you have to get comfortable with. I know it took me a long time to figure this out because I didn't like being in that neutral zone, being in limbo, kind of being in no man's land and feeling like, what in the world's going on? Uh, but now I can tell you that two things. One, I look forward to those opportunities to wander around in that neutral zone because I know something new is going to come of it if I just can persist long enough. I don't think anyone ever has a totality of their life in that neutral zone, but parts of it. When I left being Commissioner of Education and before I made the transition into coming to Doane for the Ed Specialist and Doctoral program, I was 6 months in a neutral zone of where do I fit? I need to be relevant. I can't work at Walmart and be a greeter there, or, do something like that. And so had I not had the experience before of being comfortable with that, I'd have probably taken just about any job that came along. And yet, when I finally decided to come to Doane, it was exactly the new beginning that I was looking for as I was letting go of what was and wandering around a little bit in that neutral zone, thinking through different things. Had I become impatient with that, I could have I could have made a serious mistake. I mean, I could have blown an opportunity that's been the greatest opportunity that I've had, one of the greatest opportunities that I've had in my life. So the point being is that leaders figure out ways to lead transitions, to lead people through a neutral zone, to help them feel comfortable, and go back to the previous presentation about Maslow, understanding what happens to people when they enter that neutral zone. They're going to feel like they don't belong. They're going to feel like there's not a security there, or a stability, or predictability. And yet, as you begin to then merge into that new beginning, there starts to be again the new significance of new work, or significance of new work. And then, of course, people begin to move into self-actualized work in that new beginning. Again, the point being is to understand the management process of how do you help people let go? How do you help people when they're wandering around in the wilderness in that neutral zone? And how do you help them understand when the new beginning is starting to take hold in their life? I think the issue is the balancing of how much time do you need to be in that neutral zone to completely let go of the old, and yet not be in there so long that people get frustrated and say, my goodness, I'm going to go somewhere else, or what a stupid idea this is. We don't seem to have any leadership in it, because you can't wander around in that neutral zone too long. I think people fear that neutral zone because it is letting go of that security blanket of where we used to be. It's this in-between stage. It's kind of like being a teenager all over again in many ways. And yet it's not yet the new. You can probably see the new, and I think one of the things leaders can do is to keep discussions and conversations about what is the vision of this new beginning, or this new thing that we're trying to do, so that as we are wandering around and trying things and stumbling, so to speak, how do we know when we've stepped on something or entered something that may be part of that new beginning? I think the other thing that I would say about it, and we'll quit with that, you may want to read the book. I think it's well worth your time. I thought it was an excellent book. Is that leading people through that neutral zone is a critical part of the leader, critical role of a leader, and helping people to be innovative while they're insecure or they're not quite feeling as comfortable as they would like to feel, because innovation is the key to getting from the neutral zone to the new beginning. If you don't try anything new while you're out there in the neutral zone wandering around in the desert, you're going to wander around in the desert forever. It's a time to risk. It's a time to try new things. It's a time to be creative and entrepreneurial, because that's the way you begin to reach those levels as you reflect on them, to say, aha, this is where we want to go, or this is a piece of this thing. Let me put it in a very more real kind of perspective. I think the advent of PLCs suffered from this inability of many schools and leaders to live in that neutral zone. I think the attempt to let go of the old way we did professional development, the day-long in-service at the middle of the year prior to the school year and that kind of thing, and then go about teaching classes, and then some afternoon we have another one and that kind of thing, to getting to a PLC, a professional learning community kind of notion, that the neutral zone was very uncomfortable because the district spent a lot of money and trained a lot of people in what PLC was all about. And so there were boards of education, superintendents of schools, and principals who wanted to see action right away. And a lot of times PLC became initially the Book of the Month Club or the Topic of the Month Club, and that was never what PLC was intended to be. So wandering around in that neutral zone is not an easy thing to do. And it takes a very strong leader with a very strong sense of their core values of what's the right thing to do, so that when you come out of that, you're not only doing PLC, but you're doing it in a way that's been adapted to the context, the culture, and the capacity of the place that it's in. And so in school X, in the same district, elementary school X and elementary school Y, they're still doing PLC, but they're doing a little different because the context, culture, and capacity is different. And without wandering around in that neutral zone, you can't find that. And everybody then tries to say, well, we've got to have a fidelity to this process. And in fact, the fidelity is to the process, not to the principles behind what PLC is all about. Having fidelity to those principles of PLC is very important, but you adapt those practices underneath those principles to the context, culture, and capacity.